parties afterwards, which was on Tisner Street. These little places were, icons. You had to go to those little places.
The
dollhouse.
The dollhouse.
The
Y'all remember
dollhouse. The dollhouse was drag queens. It was originally started by Bobby White.
Bobby White, yeah. Dorian Parrish.
By Dorian Paris, yeah. The Bobby White. But the original place that they had was the first time I ever got mugged. It was called. It was called. It's in my mind. It was the Electric Palace. It was on Clinton Avenue.
Yeah.
And they just used to just do these little drag shows there. And the drag queens would come in full drag because they didn't really have much to do back in those days, except for what they call on Halloween the Fags Ball. And the Fags Ball was a big thing to go to because that was the one night that you could get in drag and you could get full drag and don't worry about the cops putting you in jail because you could put on panties and brassieres and stuff like that. And the other time that you went out in drag, if you was stopped by the cops, you had to pull off your brassiere and stuff like that because if you didn't have any male undergarments on, you would cart it off and beat up by the cops.
Wow.
So they would have the Fags Ball, and that was like a big event in Newark. And I remember my mother and them, they used to go to these, they just loved the Fags Ball. Everybody went to the Fags Ball. It was a
competition. Like the mayor.
Yeah, it was a competition, and they would go, and they would, they didn't have houses back then, but they would duel for Miss Face, body. It was like a big competition, and.
They were the precursor to the ballroom scene.
Yeah.
Because Bobby White, then that was Paris, Dupree, Bobby White and Paris from Jersey. But at that time, yes, and at that time, they were like our heroes because they was the ones that was fighting. They was the ones that was on the forefront. Drag queens was the first ones to fight.
The drag queen.
And then once they jumped on the drag queen, you ain't had no other choice but to jump because it's probably your cousin. So you had to jump in the fight. And and then we weren't fighting because we were tough. We were fighting for survival. Because the music. I remember being in bed about 2 o'clock in the morning, and the music calling me to come to Zanzibar. Mm-hmm. It would call me out my bed. I'd be asleep. I'd be like, okay, it's time. And I'm not the only one because when you young, it calls you, and you would end up at the club. You had maybe $20, and that was it. You didn't need nothing else because once you got in the club, your family took care of you. Your family took care of you. Now, guess what? You're going to stand outside till they get out the club. Because no, sir. And you got a phone. We couldn't even reach nobody in the club then, remember? You had to, if you see so-and-so, tell them I'm out here. That was now you call them, they don't even answer the phone. You're like, I know you got a phone. See, it was it's a different era.
It's funny that you talk about fights and Newark and people, places, and things. Now, y'all know I've always been a sensitive woman, but the fights that have gone on at my parties and after my parties.
Yes, Lord.
Paddy wagons coming. I've had sawed-off shotguns in my face. Wow. I have went to brawls, wigs off. But you know what? I rep my city, so you're not going to come from somewhere else and disrespect us. You're not going to do that.
No, you're not.
Okay? You're going to respect me. You're going to respect the women that are in the club. You're going to respect what we stand for. If not, you're going to have to get a beat down. And I'm sorry, that's what happened back in the day. I'm a lady, always. Mind you, with the girdle and the wig on, might have came off a couple of times. But we had to always work together as a community. And the drag queens, even my Khadijas, all of them, all my big girls, they always was right there, ready. Burn, you never lied. If they mess with somebody, and especially if it's a house member. Now to the ballroom scene, I can honestly say that's when I saw like little mini gangs come about. And then the gangs started. So a lot of things, I'm in the era, everybody, which I was, when there wasn't gangs, then it was gangs, and then it turned into something else, so social media. So I came into this whole thing, what's going to happen new? What's next? the next thing. What's going to be the next new thing? We don't know. So hopefully we're all documenting all of this, and hopefully we're not scaring anybody out there, because you can still go out. I'm at 618 Market Street, Newark, New Jersey, at Rio Lounge. Every Tuesday. It's free for all of you, so come on down. 5 to 1, and it's a safe haven, and it's down the neck. So come on out. Come on out. Just a little promo plug, that's all. Wouldn't be me if it was.
Can we poke around at this idea of sanctuary a little bit? Like, to what degree was Zanzibar a safe place to be gay?
Yes. Yes.
That's interesting.
It depended on what night you went.
Well, I don't ever remember it being an unsafe place.
But you know what though? That has to do with Al Murphy.
Yes.
Because he created it as a safe
Yeah,
space.
it wasn't unsafe.
And I think that a lot of clubs kind of imitated after that. Like First Choice, like we ran First Choice.
Right.
But the thing about Zanzibar, and I'm gonna tell you about the sanctuary. For me, you always found that people, when they got to Zanzibar, they may have never spoke to you in the street, and I'm talking about straight people.
That's right.
But when you got to Zanzibar,
That's right.
oh, hey!
Yeah.
And they didn't want to speak to you outside the club, but they would speak to you like you were best friends in Zanzibar, because there, we as gay people had status. They looked to us for fashion. They looked for us for style. Guess what? They couldn't get girls without us, really.
That's true.
Because the girls came with the queens. So let's keep it real. So we was that conduit for them to have any type of anything. So when they came to us, they were in our sanctuary.
Yes.
And I don't never remember seeing anybody get beat in Zanzibar.
No.
I don't remember that
I
type
never
of thing.
remember anything like that.
I don't. Now Murphy's, by the time Murphy's coming around, yeah, we was a little rough around the edges there. Yeah. But it was warranted. And I wouldn't think of I never thought of Murphy's as a sanctuary, and I'm gonna tell you why. Because the owners of Murphy's never cared about us.
No.
We had nowhere else to go by this time.
they were
So we
making money.
used Murphy's. Murphy's was what it was. There was no love. Nobody said, "Oh, I love Murphy's." No, you love the drinks in Murphy's. That was what that was. But with Zanzibar, even First Choice, I always found when you had an owner or the manager that was in tune with the community, that's where you had sanctuary. If somebody just owned the building, it was not sanctuary. Right. So there was a difference.
Yeah, and I think that that's now why, and I know, speaking personally for me, I think that's now why clubs, and Teresa, you could probably speak to this too, we have to change venues so much now. Because when you first have that conversation as a promoter with an owner, it's all good and wonderful. It's beautiful. They're like, oh, yes, please bring the lesbians. We love them. And then, a couple months, a year down the road, it's another conversation. It's a whole nother thing. And so it's a lot of work now, I think, on the part of a promoter. That's why, when I first got here, my first party was at Guitar Bar in the Ironbound. I was there for 2 years and, making money hand over fist, and walked away because the owner was not someone who believed in this idea of sanctuary. It no longer became a safe space for me and for the women that I wanted to bring there. And so I think now it's a lot more work to find owners in spaces that do provide that sanctuary. And, Teresa said a little while ago, everybody wants to be a promoter, and everybody's not going to do that work, right? Everybody's not going to sit there and have those hard conversations with owners about, make sure that, if I have a trans person in my clientele, we're not doing male and female bathrooms on my night, right? Where, anybody can use whatever bathroom they want. And, if you have your bartenders behind the bar, they need to be treating, all of my clientele with respect. And it takes a certain type of promoter to be able to have that level of conversation. And I think it's a little bit different from what you got with, a Zanzibar, because, these are not, they're not gay-owned, most of them, they're not gay-owned venues. And so there's always, I think, that rub between the promoter and the owner.
Well, Deneen, right now, a lot of the clubs, they accept the women with open arms. These owners love to see women with women on women, but then when the men with men, they have a problem with it. Then I have a problem with it, then I have to go. Because we are one family, always, no matter what. I'm a lesbian. I live as a lesbian. I always have for a lot of years, over 20-something years. So I don't know how to be anything else right now. I think I could. I don't know. Someone else would be like, I don't know. But men are gorgeous. I still love all men. You know, but at the end of the day, these club owners love to see women with women. They welcome the women, but I would like to see them also welcome the men. So when they don't do that, I leave. I gotta go.
But that also goes to back to what we was. Let me see this. So this goes back to the fact that hatred oversteps money. Do you know they would rather give up money than to see two men dance? And this is not uncommon in Newark.
Right.
And you know, and they do tell you, Deneen, oh yeah, I have no problems with that. Have a ball here.
Yep.
And once they see a chick with a dick, and don't let them have let her be good looking. Because if she's good looking, your whole club is ruined. Because now you're messing up. His boys, and it just doesn't equal. It's not a good soup. It's not the ingredients that's needed. And I equate it to prejudice, because anytime that you are willing to sacrifice profit just to dislike, you know what I'm saying, and just to let people dance. Me and Teresa had a conversation last night. I will not mention any names and there's a club owner in Newark. Gay. Don't want no gay men up in there. Don't, everybody, child, he a big old queen, everybody know. But it's not about people knowing, it's about him being comfortable with himself. And I'm telling you, we have more gay on gay hate.
Right.
And we don't talk about that because this guy has a beautiful club and it's not even open. Not even open. And he knows he can make money. He closed all week. But I'd rather not do it.
Yeah.
And that says a lot about us, the times, and how we call ourselves have grown when we really, times have moved on and we haven't really grown as much as we like to say we have. Right. Everything is not really for inclusion.
Okay.
Got a question?
I'm gonna ask like two more questions because we definitely Deneen brought up the topic of trans people, trans men and women, and they are often ignored and silenced and often targeted subsection of our community. So wanted to know how do you feel clubs as Sanctuary benefited like the trans population, or like did they do enough, or can you speak about that?
Well, I know that here, when I came here, I was surprised because, like I said, I'm from New Jersey, but I moved to Atlanta, and that was really when I got into kind of gay nightlife. And in this, it's ironic, but when I was in the South, I saw a lot more embracing of the trans community. Here in Newark, it's an interesting kind of subculture within our community that I think has, from at least in my experience, only been kind of targeted or engaged from kind of a health aspect. You know, I think we're just now starting to see the trans community be engaged on other levels, but I think it's always been about supporting mental health or supporting, physical health in terms of the trans community here. But I do think that's changing significantly here in Newark. And I know that any event or party that I've gone to here in Newark, whether it's been one of my own, whether it's been a Newark Pride event, there's always been a concentrated effort to engage the trans community. But I think that also speaks to like where trans people are in this country in general, right? Like I think all over the country we see transgender populations and members of the transgender community being marginalized or ostracized, even within the gay community. And so I think as that begins to change nationally, I think we will see, and we've already begun to see kind of that trickle down effect to have it happen here in Newark.
Well, answering your question, if we must say, from back in the day, in Newark, we didn't have any population of transgender. What did you call it, Teresa? It was like...
It was butch queen up in drag or drag queens.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Or guys.
Or guys dressed up.
And they didn't hang with us.
Yeah, and they didn't
hang with us.
Or daggers.
Yeah, because back then, femme queens or transgender people, they actually lived their life as women, mostly.
Right.
It's only now that you're getting these transgenders that, which I don't quite understand, but they're free to do whatever they choose. That they hang. I thought they wanted to be women back then. They didn't hang with us. And if you saw a femme queen in the club, if you saw Tracy Africa in a club, it was because she had been begged. They pulled her out the house, and she did it for a friend. Because again, we kept them on pedestals.
That's what I was about to say.
We have them on pedestals.
That's
Now, transgendered women, you can go get them like you can go get a pack of cigarettes. They're right down the street. Your neighbor got one, you won, and then the other one won.
I'm not one. Oh.
Well, I didn't mean you.
But
You sure? No, I'm joking.
No,
But
because we in our own community was biased and racist about as far as
we had our own.
you had to be gorgeous. Just call it like it is. You had to be drop dead gorgeous to be associate for a drag queen or the Marks and Danes and the Al Murphys and all the rest of them to really have anything to do with you. Because like someone said, they had to be invited. Mark, you said
You had to be
you
invited.
had to be invited or asked
We
out.
didn't have-
You were an item. You were a token.
And we treated you as
and
such.
treated you like that.
But now they're like every block.
and I think you make a good point that transgender is a relatively new term. Right?
Not even 20 years old.
Exactly. So I think that definitely speaks to where we are in terms of just embracing the community and also integrating the community.
And just to wax anthropological for a moment, the studies actually show that what arouses violence on the part of people more so than two people of the same physical anatomy having sex together, what arouses violence more is people who transgress the gender norms. And our problem is we have a two-gender system, and the transgender identity is saying we don't want a two-gender system. We think those rules don't work. We want to mix it up. We want to be who we are. Why is it that only boys should wear blue and girls wear pink and only women can wear dresses and men wear pants? What happens if I want to wear a dress and I happen to have a penis, right? Or the other
Make
way
sure you're
around.
tough.
And this is the problem that we are faced with now, and the gay community is unfortunately not immune to that kind of cultural conditioning. What do you do when you have only a two-category system, but people who inhabit other
Who are falling out
categories,
the category.
there's nowhere to put them, right? They become, as one anthropologist said, like matter out of place, right? They just don't fit in. And this is what we are struggling with. We did not have to deal with that. I mean, I can even remember in my own period being a teenager, people just automatically presumed if you were a male homosexual, it meant you actually wanted to be a woman, right? And what could be worse, right? Here's how misogynistic our patriarchal culture is. What could be worse than being a woman? Why would a man want to be a woman? And second, for a woman who desired other women, that meant she wanted to be a man in their minds. And what could be more arrogant than you
And a woman.
aspiring to be a man?
Because
when
we
you
are the
a
top of
woman?
the food chain.
Yes,
And that's
right.
true too. And I remember AGs used to really have it bad. They used to have it really. But I'm talking about as far as the club scene. Because remember, we didn't really have a place for the AGs. But with us, again, it was such a different world. Like, if a woman wore men's clothes, it was okay. We just had to choose a butch.
Hold on. Aggressive. I see people looking. What's the AG? Aggressive.
Sorry about that.
I thought it was a supermarket.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yep. Okay. So my last question is, where do you believe this concept of a club as a sanctuary will evolve to, you know, based on your knowledge of the community and your history? Yeah, each person. Yeah.
I feel that history has a way of repeating itself, all right? And somewhere along the line, some may not my generation, the up-and-coming generation, they're gonna get it right. And we're gonna welcome them in, and they're gonna have a safe haven, and they're gonna have mentors, and things are gonna repeat itself. I know it will.
I hope so. Before I have to put my teeth in a cup, because I love to dance, I really I was very saddened at the so-called, and I'm saying it, Zanzibar reunion. As Bernie and different panelists have said, I really like to party in New York because it's just a freer vibe and freer spirit. No egos, nobody looking at you out of their eyes. So I was at the garage reunion the week before, and I came to the Zanzibar reunion pumped up because it's home. So the first thing I go in and I'm saying, well, who are these people? Because I could count on maybe both hands real Zanzibar heads. It were all new people. And you know, you tried to get in, but it's just not there. So with the hope of divine order, before I have to be rolled in the club in the wheelchair, I hope somebody does open up another venue for people of free spirit. We don't want to label it. Take me as I am.
Well, I think
Go to my website.
I think one of the big problems that we face before the recreation of club spaces as sanctuary is the fact that everything is digitalized. People no longer need to leave their houses for any reason.
Indeed.
You can order food, you can order sex, you can get it all right to your door. And until the grid collapses and we all discover that we need to be with each other face to face rather than on Skype or doing our premiere act on YouTube, all of that needs to we need to get some kind of perspective on that, or it needs to collapse or change in some way before the recreation of those kinds of spaces become possible, where you can have that kind of intimacy even with people that you only know, as Bernie pointed out, or only know you in that club. You know, I think of those club spaces, it's like when you go to the drive-up window at the bank, the teller talks to you and she knows you, but if she sees you in the supermarket, she doesn't know you because she only knows your face peering out of your car at the drive-up teller. And it works, I think, the same way with the technology that we have and the way that has eroded civic space and even private space in so many ways. So we need to have some kind of reformation there before the creation of sanctuary in the way we are talking about it becomes a possibility once again.
I do agree. I agree exactly what you're saying. I'm passing on that.
I think in terms of it, where do I see it evolving? Where do I see it going? I think we're going to have to be able to connect with this younger generation at the core of their I don't know, but I'm at that weird age where I'm like the youngin, but not really. At the core of their vulnerability, right? And I think that back in the day, that vulnerability was easily, I think, identified and defined. I think now, for a lot of the reasons mentioned here, whether it's social media, whether it's kind of this, this digitized world, the vulnerability of people is often hidden, and we don't hear about it until they've hung themselves in their closet, right? And so I think if we're able to connect with these youth at kind of this core of their vulnerability, we'll be able to create spaces that truly tap into what their sanctuary needs to look like. And it may not be a club, right? It may not be a club. It may, maybe that space in that time has passed. But I do think there is a need for a different kind of sanctuary. And I hope that both, like all generations, will need to be kind of connected in order to figure out what that is.
I know it's gonna sound silly. What was the question?
You know what?
I just want to make sure I'm answering it correctly. What was it?
What do you believe the
About sanctuary.
yes, the club's the sanctuary, like
You
the
know-
evolution of
you
this
know,
concept? What do you think the
where do
future
I see it going? Be
Yeah.
honest with you, I don't have a clue. But I think we shouldn't have a clue. I think we don't need to find the answers for the next generation. They need to find their own sanctuary, and only thing we could tell them is what we got out of it. You understand how sanctuary helped me? I can't tell you that you're going to have this great sanctuary and you're missing out. Find your own sanctuary, because my mother didn't tell me Zanzibar was going to be mine. She didn't. I'm just being honest. So I found mine, and I respect the next generation enough for them to find their own. So I don't want to give them a quick fix saying, oh, you missed out on, you missed out, you can't get it back, it's done. But they need to find their own niche. Now, when I do go to the clubs, they're dancing to hip hop like they dancing to Grace Jones, Pull Up to My Bumper. They getting it in, and I'm sitting there like, wasn't this just playing on the radio? But that's where they're at with it. So I think sanctuary is going to have to come from the heart. And it will lead you, and it will call you, and when you find sanctuary, you know you're safe. Right. And that's when you know you're at sanctuary, when you feel safe.
I think it's 10 after 9, and I think we might need to actually stop now.
Okay.
But it's been a fabulous, fabulous panel. And I just want to make a few quick announcements, and then we will give a hand to our fabulous moderators and panelists. One is that we have 3 more upcoming events that we hope you come. Tomorrow night is Out Loud, Expressions of Sanctuary, 7 to 9 p.m. at 765 Broad Street, 7th floor. It's an evening of poetry and spoken word, sponsored by the Geraldine R. Dodge Foundation. And we're having great poets, great spoken word people, and great music by DJ Just Love, who you want to hear. So we're talking about music.